Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today we'll have a very in-depth look at Cainhurst and the Vilebloods. This is my first Bloodborne lore video, but I want it to be the most comprehensive video available on the complex society of Cainhurst and how it fits in with the rest of Bloodborne's lore. More research has gone into this video than any other video I've made in the past, culminating in almost 10,000 words of notes and script. It is likely that this may be split into several videos just because of the amount of ground I would like to cover. Some of you may not mind if the videos are hours upon hours long, but this is the way I would like to structure this investigation. Several key figures will be omitted for the most part, and will be spoken about in future videos. They include Martyr Ligarius, Annalise, Alfred, and the Executioners. While they will all be discussed in this video, they do not have their own dedicated sections like other aspects. I am prefacing this video like this just because of the amount of hours that I have spent researching this topic. I want the execution of this analysis to be as honest and coherent as possible. This is all my own research. I have refrained from looking at other popular lore theories so far, apart from Redgrave's, but I will not use any of his content in this video. I wanted to begin my look into Bloodborne by myself, so I do not taint any original theories I might have had. This means I have not looked at any Aegon Vestora videos, nor have I looked at any JSF videos. I will after this is made, but this is how I am starting this now, just in case I accidentally say anything that they have said already. The fun of lore hunting is more about coming up with your own ideas rather than just regurgitating what others have said. Let's jump into this. Let's begin by talking about the etymology and heraldry of Cainhurst. The word Cainhurst can be split into two parts, Cain and Hurst. In the Bible, Cain was the brother of Abel. Cain was also the first person to commit a murder, killing Abel and lying about it to God. He became cursed after this happened. Hurst translates to hill or hillock. This gives us the concept of murder hill or hill of murder. This is an interesting concept to think about as we move forward. Heraldry refers to the design of a coat of arms of a house, nation, country, and so on. Cainhurst is especially interesting when taking a closer look at the colours and animals depicted. We get a good look at the coat of arms on the Stagecoach, the Cainhurst Badge, and Annalise's rug. It displays two wolves mirroring each other on a crimson background. Red or crimson is typically indicative of one's eagerness to serve, as well as one's nature as a warrior or martyr. I originally thought that the animals depicted on the crest was a lion, but examining it closer I realised it actually looks more like a wolf. Lions are usually depicted as kingly and brave, while the wolf means valour and guardianship. Wolves were also considered to be cruel and merciless, as well as man-eaters. The concept of eating men and guardianship is something to keep in mind as we continue. So, a quick few facts about Cainhurst. It was once home to a noble family. It was a monarchical society, if Annalise truly was the queen and once had a king. They're the enemy of the healing church, possibly inbred. The majority of the Cainhurst family was killed by church executioners that stormed the castle. Since the raid, the road has been lost, or is just part of an elaborate illusion, and we use the Cainhurst Summons to reach the castle. The Cainhurst Summons will be the first item relating to Cainhurst that we will be discussing. The description reads, an old blood-stained summons inviting an honoured guest to the forsaken castle Cainhurst. Rather bafflingly, it is addressed to you. Do not hesitate, the stagecoach leaves from Hemwick Crossing. An interesting thing to note already is that in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Jonathan Harker is invited to Dracula's castle. This is going to lead into the vampire theory I've got later, but just an interesting little tidbit to start off with. So instantly we have a few questions about this item. Who left the letter? Who wrote the letter? Is it bloodstained because it's been left in a blood clinic or for another reason? An unopened Cainhurst Summons is found on the table next to Annalise. The description of the unopened summons reads, an old sealed summons. Like the first of its kind, it is an invitation to Cainhurst, but for whom it is not known, as it lacks an addressee. Like the first of its kind. Does this mean that the first one was the one we received? Could this mean that Annalise could have left the letter in Yosefska's clinic? Could the blood on the letter be her own? The Cainhurst Summons is for an honoured guest, you, but what have you done to become honoured in the eyes of the Vilebloods? Also, assuming that the first of its kind is referring to your letter, why would it say that they are similar in the way that they lack addressees? I am tempted to say that this may be part of the illusion of Ligarius and that the letter always shows the name of the person reading it, but I do not want to attribute everything unexplained to the illusion. That's just bad and lazy lore hunting. Next, let's discuss the stagecoach. The stagecoach that takes you to the castle disappears if you attack it. Is it real? Is it even there? I know what I said about the illusion originally, but for the horses to vanish if attacked, it does make me think that, while visually effective, the power of the illusion may wane at such a distance from where it originates atop Cainhurst Castle. Also, as you enter the stagecoach, something watches you from afar. Whatever it is, perhaps it left a summons for you to find in Yusefska's clinic. The stagecoach has no driver, the horses themselves look half dead, covered in lacerations and cuts, and the door opens by itself, as does a door and a gate later on in Cainhurst itself. Pair this with the fact that the letter to Cainhurst is addressed to you, and someone watches you from the distance as you climb inside. Someone is definitely guiding you and even helping you get to Cainhurst for some reason. Horses from Stagecoach inexplicably die also upon reaching the castle, the bridge is broken, and everything is snowed over. A couple of quick things to note here. Firstly, travelling by the stagecoach gives 2 insight. Also about the obelisk at Hemwick Crossing. It's guarded by 2 executioners. The executioners are probably guarding the obelisk because they know that anyone approaching with a Cainhurst summons will be able to reach the castle. However, this would make Alfred's motives different in nature to the executioners. The executioners seem to know that the obelisk has a connection to Cainhurst, and may know even that it takes people to the castle. Why else would they be patrolling the area? The question is then, are they guarding the obelisk knowing that Ligarius is on the other side somewhere, or are they searching for a way across? Cainhurst Castle is covered in snow with no sentient people around except for Annalise. Everyone else is a mutated former resident of Cainhurst, or a ghost. Stone statues of people are scattered all around the grounds as well as the inside parts of the castle. The castle for the most part seems frozen, literally as well as metaphorically, in time. The floors are spotless for the most part, and is in order and clean. When the executioners attacked, they must have done so without warning, slitting the throats of all inhabitants while they were blindfolded, even decapitating some. The first item that we'll be looking at to kind of understand how Cainhurst operated in terms of hunting is the Numbing Mist. The description of the Numbing Mist reads, "Throw to create a mist cloud that numbs a hunter's life essence and prevents restoration of HP." Said to be used by the blood hunters of Cainhurst, its recipe is a closely guarded secret by the line of nobles inhabiting the castle. It's interesting is that the numbing mist is used to numb a hunter's life essence. As we know, numbing is often a byproduct of anesthetic, a method used before surgery or when pain will be induced on a person willingly. Why would Cainhurst hunters want to numb their victims before seizing them? One could say that they simply wanted to stop their enemies from healing, but why would it be called Numbing Mist? Personally, I think that this is part of the Cainhurst hunters' arsenal, because it would behoove them to deliver their hunted back to the castle alive, their blood still fresh for drinking or harvesting by the family. Also curious is how imposter Yusefska supplies 2 of these items to you upon delivering a civilian to her. The recipe is a secret guarded by the nobles of Cainhurst, yet they still seem to have gotten into Yarnham, as they seem to have once traded together. Others are found in the Cathedral Ward. Let's discuss the Cainhurst Vileblood Covenant. It can be joined after speaking with Annalise and pledging allegiance to her, and they are sworn enemies of the Healing Church and the Executioners. The Covenant allegiance is upgraded through blood dregs. The blood dregs item description reads, "The Vilebloods of Cainhurst, blood-lusting hunters, see these frightful things in cold blood. They often appear in the blood of echo fiends, that is to say, the blood of hunters. Queen Annalise partakes in these blood dreg offerings so that she may one day bear the child of blood, the next Vileblood Heir." So, blood dregs are offered to the Queen of the Vilebloods. A dreg, by definition, is considered the most unpleasant, or dare I say, vile part of a whole. In this case, they are found exclusively in the blood of hunters, unless you kill with the corruption rune equipped. I like to think that the blood dregs are the blood left behind when you kill an enemy, the part that goes unwanted, unless you are actively searching for it as a Cainhurst hunter. They want no part of the kill to go to waste, for even the smallest, most elusive droplets of blood may lead to a Vileblood Heir. This takes us to our next point. The Vilebloods, Cainhurst, require an heir. Heirs in noble families are of paramount importance, and Cainhurst currently lacks one. Thus, Annalise is searching for a new heir. Her husband, presumably the King of Cainhurst, was killed in a raid by the Executioners, or Nightmare Executioners, as they went room to room killing the Vilebloods. The King's chair next to Annalise is empty. An interesting point, which we will get into later, is that she constantly refers to herself as we and our, capitalized, as if there is someone in the room with her, and someone of importance. It's important to note that Annalise wants to give birth to a child of blood, or a celestial child. It seems that no matter how many dregs are offered, however, she never gives birth to a celestial child. implying that the surrogate mother of a Great One is chosen, with the mother having no say in the matter. Perhaps Annalise has not been ordained to give birth to a Great One. We will talk about Ariana later on and how she fits in with the Vilebloods, as well as Alfred and Ligarius in future videos. The description of the Vileblood Covenant reads, "Pledges to this oath are Cainhurst Vilebloods, hunters of blood who find dregs for their queen of cold blood, particularly in that of hunters. Yet the corrupt are heretics in the eyes of the church, thus subject to the wrath of the executioners." This description helps us understand the Vilebloods' relationship to the church in more detail. Assuming that the church came after the Cainhurst family and legacy was established, the founding members of the church would have been aware of their presence and the influence they held in the land, not city, of Yharnam. They would also have been aware of the numbers, skill, and scheming nature of the Vilebloods. All those who have power fear to lose it. And this is no different in the case of the Cainhurst family. Imagine yourself as a Cainhurst noble, the foremost power in the land. Begin to see the healing church grow over time, accruing resources, soldiers, and technology. It would have been a very intimidating time for the family. Next, we will be looking at the Vileblood Register, which is found within the library of Cainhurst Castle. The description reads, "Red leather record of the Vileblood loyal to the Covenant of Annalise, Queen of the Vilebloods, at Cainhurst Castle. A record of the Vilebloods, bloodlusting hunters who seek blood dregs of their prey, kept throughout the ages." There's not a whole lot we can gather from this, apart from the fact that it is a record that has been kept throughout the ages. This would mean that this act of killing for blood and bringing the remains to the Queen has not been a short-lived affair, but rather taking place for many, many years, possibly predating the healing church itself and maybe even Byrgenwerth. This may make Cainhurst the oldest institution in the lands of Yharnam and its surrounding areas apart from the Thumerian cities underground. I have a feeling that the fishing hamlet may have been around for a longer period of time, but it is hard to say for certain, and not what this investigation is about. Also, if the goal of taking blood dregs to the Queen is to produce an heir, aka a child of blood, aka a great one, and that the collection of blood dregs has been occurring for ages, then Cainhurst may have even discovered or had a crude understanding of who the Thumerians were before the Byrgenwerth scholars did. If Martyr Ligarius is a Thumerian like Redgrave has suggested, then his knowledge may have been some kind of a prophecy for Cainhurst, making them understand the power of blood, and the ability for a human woman to produce a child of blood. Next we'll be looking at the Corruption Rune, the description of which reads, "A secret symbol left by Carol, runesmith of Byrgenwerth. Several runes contain a nuance of blood, including the rune of corruption associated with the Oath of the Corrupt. Pledges to this oath are Cainhurst Vilebloods, hunters of blood, who find dregs for their queen in cold blood, particularly in that of hunters. Yet the corrupt are heretics in the eyes of the church, and thus subject to the wrath of the executioners." The rune, an uttering of a great one, as transcribed by Carol the Byrgenwerth scholar. It reiterates what we have already been saying about the Cainhurst Vilebloods, apart from the line about the nuance of blood. It says that this and several other runes have the nuance of blood, but this is the only one in the game with this description, implying that not all runes discovered by Carol appear in the game. This would seem to imply that Cainhurst may have had a special relationship with Byrgenwerth or Carol in the early days, or perhaps Thumerians imparted certain knowledge unto Cainhurst before being discovered by Byrgenwerth. If the nuance of blood is referring to the rune grooves seemingly filled with blood, then the Hunter, Beast's Embrace, Impurity, and Erden Writhe runes have the nuance as well. Corrupted blood seems to be a motif of Cainhurst or the Vileblooded. The question remains, why are they considered heretical? I do not think that because they drink blood or inbreed, speculation. I believe that they are branded this way because of the threat they represent to the healing church. Prior to the Vilebloods being almost wiped out, they would have been the last possible bastion of resistance to the church. The Corruption Rune is the official rune of Cainhurst and in my opinion resembles the Egyptian Ankh. The Ankh is traditionally representative of life's journey, death, and the soul. In this case, the Ankh is stacked, and the symbol, which normally means the passage of birth, life, and death, is stretched into infinity, perhaps implying that the Cainhurst nobles are immortal and have many lives. Perhaps the most pertinent evidence for this is Alfred's dialogue after he kills Annalise, stating brazenly,
"What good's your immortality now?"
Immortality, or at least very long lives, have always been synonymous with vampires, and the gargoyle grapple attack, along with other pieces of evidence, seem to point out the possibility that the nobles of Cainhurst were vampires, falling to the temptation of the old blood. Next we'll be discussing the Cainhurst Badge, the description of which reads, "The badge of the Royal Guards of Cainhurst, loyal guardians of the Vileblood Queen Annalise. The Vilebloods are hunters of blood, and hunt prey as they search for blood dregs. The hunter who joins them is faced with a decision, to merely borrow their strength or to become one of them, heart and soul." The Cainhurst Badge tells us a little more about the guards/hunters of Cainhurst. It seems that the term guard and hunter are used interchangeably, implying perhaps that they were only referred to as hunters after Gehrman had established that name as a group of beast hunters. Guard and hunter are not synonyms. At the same time, however, they may be both guard and hunter simultaneously and report to Annalise. The last line of the description is interesting, as it lets us know that there is a difference between joining the Vilebloods and actually becoming a Vileblood yourself. We may say that we only borrow their strength and do not become a Vileblood. This is interesting, however, as Annalise allows us to drink of her blood. Is this the necessary trial to become a Vileblood? To drink from the blood dregs of countless dead? It is supposed to transform one's heart and soul. The reference to the soul is interesting as it relates back to the meaning of the Ankh, which means both life and one's soul specifically. Next we'll be discussing the ever-fashionable Cainhurst Set, which has a description that reads, "Silver helmet/armor/gauntlet/leggings worn by the royal guards who protect Annalise, Queen of the Vilebloods at Cainhurst Castle." This paper-thin silver armor is said to deflect blood of ill intent, and is what allows the royal guards to capture prey for their beloved queen, so that one day she may bear a child of blood. Again, it reiterates the fact that the guards defend and hunt for Annalise. The second bit is much more interesting. Firstly, the armor is paper-thin silver. While the armor does have fairly high stats for piercing damage, it does not fare well with blunt damage. The most interesting part of it is that it allows the guards to capture prey for their queen. This goes back to what I was talking about with the Numbing Mist. The Cainhurst guards want to take people back to Cainhurst alive, not dead. That way the queen, or other nobles when they were alive, are able to drink the blood of their victims while they are alive, presumably what would give them the most sustenance. By conducting themselves this way, they do not have to worry about any blood going to waste. In front of Annalise, the carpet is spattered with blood. One could say that this is like this because we are also able to drink from her blood, but at the same time, there is quite a bit all over the carpet. Perhaps the captured prey were brought before her where she could feast upon them. Another interesting fact is that the armor set includes two important details, falls and sabatons. Falls are the metal plates that hang from the waist, covering the hips and thighs. Sabatons are essentially steel shoes protecting the feet. In medieval times, these two items were used, but predominantly by knights on horseback, which mitigated the weight of the set that they had to be worn. This seems to imply, along with the statues of knights on horseback in Annalise's chamber, that Cainhurst knights were actually mounted at one point for the most part, and did not always operate on foot. As a side note, the same mounted knight model is found within the Lauren Chalice dungeon in one of the rooms, which may imply that Cainhurst knights of yore may have once descended into the labyrinths, bringing back old blood. As we know, Bloodborne seems to be set in a 17th to 18th century aesthetic, which makes horseback sword and shield combat slightly antiquated. Contrary to that, it does add credence to my other point, that Cainhurst has been around for a very long time, perhaps predating Byrgenwerth and the Healing Church. The armor sets look like they're at least a few hundred years older than the Yharnam garb. Long ago, the Cainhurst Vilebloods would have been easily able to chase down any that deemed fit enough for the consumption of the Queen. These methods, tied with the fact that they had been listed in the register for ages, makes me come to the conclusion that the Vilebloods were aware of the Great Ones, and to an extension the Pthumerians, before the Byrgenwerth scholars. If Pthumerians themselves used to be human beings at some point, but were transformed into grotesque monsters after a period of time, it would not be a stretch to imagine that a Pthumerian had actually been a noble at Cainhurst to help them understand the power of the blood and the Great Ones. We will return to this when talking about the Knight set later on. Next we will be discussing an enemy at Cainhurst Castle that is referred to by a bunch of different names. They are either referred to as the Indentured Chevalier, Soldier of Cain, Disgusting Little Man, or Cainhurst Servants. These inhabitants of Cainhurst are referred by several different names and carry a few different kinds of weapons. Some carry a cane, others carry a cane and a candelabra, some with a rapier and some with a blowgun. Some are hostile while others seem completely passive unless you attack them. Even though the castle seems to be mostly deserted, they still cry and scrub the floors feverishly as if they are being watched by the noble family. As it turns out, they are being watched by the ghosts of Cainhurst Castle. In appearance, they are hunchbacked and twisted. If people born in Cainhurst did feast on the blood of the prey brought back by the guards, then it could be implied that since the guardsmen have not been functioning as they once did back in the day, no fresh blood has been coming in, leading to the remaining inhabitants starving and turning into human monsters. The name Chevalier is the most interesting. In the real world, the word chevalier refers to the French Legion of Honor, an order for military and civil merits created by Napoleon Bonaparte in 1802. Chevalier in French literally translates to knight and is the lowest rank in the Legion and requires 20 years of public service performed to an excellent standard to join this rank. This is the most interesting in regards to Cainhurst, as they are referred to as the Indentured Chevalier. The indentured part would mean that a legal document or contract had to be signed before they became chevaliers. Interestingly, a word that is often used as a synonym for indentured is covenant. As we know, we can join the Vileblood covenant by drinking the blood of the Queen. This is our indenture, our contract, our binding agreement. In light of this, I believe it is possible that the indentured chevaliers, contracted knights in other words, are Cainhurst guards that have been blood-starved, transforming into weaker versions of themselves as their strength and ability to trap and drink the blood of their prey was cut off. In addition to this, the name for the Indentured Chevaliers in the Japanese version of the game refers to them as the Soldiers of Cain. This helps us to understand that they were at one point soldiers for Cainhurst. And who were the most foremost force in Cainhurst? The Cainhurst Guards, or Soldiers of Cain. The next enemy we'll be discussing is a lost child of antiquity. The lost children of antiquity, or gargoyles, are an interesting half-bat, half-man enemy. They appear atop the walls of Cainhurst Castle, seeming to guard the turrets and entrance to the library. They blend into their surroundings, sporting an extremely thin abdomen, wings on their arms, and vampire teeth. They will even grapple you and suck blood from your neck, further cementing the theory that the Cainhurst inhabitants were once, in fact, vampires. Perhaps the most important lore point of this creature is in the name. The word antiquity has some very specific meanings. While words like antiques and antiquated relate to items or concepts deemed old or possibly archaic, antiquity has two meanings that reference back to my theory about Cainhurst being the oldest institution in the Yharnam area and their possible immortality. Antiquity may refer to any period before the Middle Ages, this period being 476 to 1453, but still within Western civilization-based human history or prehistory. If this gargoyle is a child of the time of antiquity, then this would make this creature, and possibly the rest of the inhabitants, very, very old, if we can assume that Yharnam exists in some kind of 17th to 18th century era. Alternatively, antiquities refer to objects or buildings of works of art from the ancient past. The ancient past. What race of beings in Bloodborne can we truly refer to as ancient? The Pthumerians. I'm not an expert in Bloodborne lore yet, but I would like to investigate the theory on whether the Cainhurst royalty were Pthumerian. It would add an extra layer as to why the executioners decided to wipe out the Vilebloods, seeing them as a Pthumerian family growing power in the world above ground. Next up, we will be discussing the Cainhurst Hunter, which is found in the Chalice dungeons. It wears the Cainhurst Set. Real Cainhurst hunters/guards exist in the Pthumerian, Ys, and Lauren Chalice dungeons. I do not know if appearances of certain enemies in the Chalice dungeons are canonical, as the dungeons are randomly generated, but please let me know if I'm wrong about this. We've already spoken quite a bit about the Cainhurst guards and what their purpose is, but the dialogue they use during battle helps us understand a little bit more about Cainhurst. They have 3 dialogue lines. Firstly, blood for the Queen. Fairly self-explanatory given what we know about the guards. They accrue blood dregs for Annalise. Their second line of dialogue is blood for the Child of Blood. It starts to sound like a bit of a Warhammer 40k game here. As we know, Annalise is attempting to give birth to the Child of Blood, composed or at least impregnated by the blood dregs. The final line is the most interesting. Blood for the Blood Rapture. Before we analyse this piece of dialogue, let's have a look at the Blood Rapture rune. The description reads, a carol rune that transcribes inhuman sounds. Blood Rapture is the raw euphoria of the warmth of blood. Restores HP with visceral attacks, one of the darker hunter techniques. This rune resonates with servants of the Queen, carrier of the child of blood, who yearn for their Queen's blood with little hope of requitement. For them, they find solace in Blood Rapture that serves as a surrogate for their desires. This is a very interesting rune when it comes to Cainhurst. Firstly, it does not contain the nuance of blood that the Corruption rune contains, because the rune is not exclusive to Cainhurst. Firstly, the raw euphoria of the warmth of blood is, in my opinion, the feeling of warm blood hitting you after a strike. The euphoria and its effect can be seen in the fighting style of the beast-possessed soul, who becomes quite a bit more powerful after drinking your blood and showcases glowing red eyes. In relation to the Cainhurst Guard/Hunters, this relates back to their wish to find and offer blood dregs to their queen. I'm going to segue slightly for a moment and look at the rune itself before going back to discussing the description. The rune enhances the power of visceral attacks and restores HP when one is used. When a visceral attack is used, it appears that the player uses their hand to reach inside the body of an enemy and rips out a significant amount of blood and presumably guts. What I thought of initially when watching a visceral attack is that it resembles what I had read about Aztec culture and their act of ripping the still beating heart of a sacrifice out and then disposing of the body afterwards. Human sacrifice was in this sense the highest level of an entire panoply of offerings which the Aztecs sought to repay the debt to their gods with, who they believed to have saved them. If we look at the Blood Rapture rune and actually turn it sideways, what I see is a broken and parted ribcage with a shining heart in the center, ready to be ripped from the chest. Anyway, back to the rune itself. It states, this rune resonates with the servants of the Queen, carrier of the child of blood, who yearn for their Queen's blood with little hope of requitement. One would immediately assume that by the Queen they are referring Annalise, the Queen of the Vilebloods. However, as we know from the description of the blood dregs, Annalise has not given birth to a child of blood, nor is she the carrier of it. It reads, Queen Annalise partakes in these blood dreg offerings so that she may one day bear the child of blood, the next Vileblood Heir. So that she may one day bear the child of blood. This is an event that has not taken place yet, and never does, no matter how many blood dregs you give her. In other queens, she has not been chosen by the great ones to carry the child. The line about the Queen and the child of blood can actually be applied to Queen Yharnam as well. She is the actual carrier, or was before Murgo was taken from her. Interestingly, the Shadow of Yharnam boss actually drops this rune. Since, as we know, the Shadows of Yharnam seem to be allied with the Queen Yharnam. Since the term Blood Rapture is exclusively used in accordance with the Cainhurst Hunters and the Shadows of Yharnam, it may imply a connection, along with their weapon of choice being the Chikage. The most common usage of the word rapture is used in regard to heavenly rapture, in which the most pure followers of Christ will ascend to heaven. Does this mean that both the Shadows and the Cainhurst Hunters believe that they will ascend through blood? This is essentially what Lawrence seems to believe in regard to the Old Blood. Back to the rune and the Cainhurst Guards/Hunters. The last line of the description reads, for them, they find solace in blood rapture that serves as a surrogate for their desires. I believe this to mean that the users of this rune that find all their earthly wishes wash away while in the grip of the hunt. They feel no need for wealth or love or happiness, only blood. I think we can kind of cut it there for the first part of this Cainhurst series. I have plenty of more to go over, including a very long section on Ariana that I can't wait to get into, but I think I'll hold that until next time. As some of you know, this is my first kind of entry into Bloodborne lore, and I am just itching to hear what you kind of think about my investigation so far. Like I said, tons of time has gone into this, so I hope you're kind of opening up your mind to a couple of different theories that may not have been suggested yet. So as always, leave your thoughts in the comments, look me up on Twitter, say hi, tell me what you think about the videos. I've also got a Facebook page for the YouTube channel, and if you message me on there, I will message you back, and feel free to have a chat about lore or send me your theories as well. I'd be very interested in hearing them. I would estimate that the next Cainhurst lore video is probably be up next week, hopefully, because this is already half an hour long, and I did want to keep these semi-short, so they're nice and digestible, especially people on mobile. But yeah, like I said, let me know. Share it around, especially if you know other people that are into Bloodborne lore. I want to kind of get some more audience members in here, apart from just Dark Souls 3, even though I do love you guys, and I will be kind of talking about more Dark Souls 3 lore in the future. But let's just see how we do with the Bloodborne lore for a bit and see if it catches on. Anyway, until next time, take it easy, and have a good one. Bye.